Welcome back to the Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined by John Paul Mason, who is smiling because I am the reason that we're a minute late, and I apologise profusely for that. I thought I had time, JP, to run in and get a cup of tea. I thought I could do it, but I was delayed. Apologies, my fault. You've already got one. You're well prepared. We are going to be talking about European endeavours. Yes, I'm out of breath. Sorry, I'm getting old. European endeavours, and I'm going to tie this into quite a few different things. I'm going to start off, JP, by talking about that incredible tifo that the Green Brigade displayed the other night. Now, since 2017, we have discussed the Green Brigade. Every single move they've made, sometimes controversially, but mainly in positive terms, and mainly because of what they bring to the atmosphere at Celtic Park, not just on European nights. What about that tifo? Let's talk about that first and foremost, JP. Outstanding, wasn't it?
Well, I'm very glad I got to see it for about 5 seconds just before they dropped it, because I had a prior commitment which I couldn't. Well, I could have got out of it. I could have said no, but I was asked to do something at work with regards to the launch of a festival that we have every year at Tuts called the New Year's Revolution, where it's like new bands, focusing on new bands, of which Bems once played it.
Yeah.
And so they asked me and Bems to do a talk on stage in front of some invited media people. I mean, I'd never done anything like that before, so I felt a little bit out of my depth, but it seemed to go well. But Bems and I had committed to it on the proviso that we were allowed to leave for the game. So we were there for the first sort of 45 minutes of it, and then the two of us made our way out to Celtic Park. So, and he'd done some great work earlier on in the day with Red Bull, with regards to getting tickets. I can't remember the exact story, but I know that it resulted in money being generated that would allow kids to go to the game via the Kano Foundation. So
brilliant.
Yeah, really good work from the big man, and it was good to see him again. So yeah, I got into Celtic Park pretty much as that tifo was there. I saw it. I couldn't read it because I didn't have time, and then it just went boom and came down. But I was like, what the hell was that? And then I see the pictures. Is your man Harji on Twitter that takes really good. It's either Hoide or Harji takes really good pictures of Celtic Park on nights, and the pictures that he's put up of the tifo are unbelievable. And when you actually think of the rhetoric that was in the tifo, to then the team to then respond to it, whether or not they saw that and it inspired them in any way at all, I would hope it did. But ultimately, the fact that they then gave a younger, as Sean said after it on here, a generational performance, a generational result and a generational performance, because that is one that people will say in 20 years' time, oh God, I remember I was 15 or 16 and I saw Celtic beat Leipzig.
Mm-hmm.
They're second top of the Bundesliga. As he also said, Sean said that Arne Engels would have been their 37th most expensive signing, which is stuck in my head since he said it.
That was an interesting start, that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't doubt that it's true, because he doesn't seem, I don't know the guy well, but he doesn't seem the type of person that would pull that sort of stat out of his proverbial derriere if he didn't.
It was very specific for it not to be accurate.
Yeah, it was specific. Kev Graham saying about the 11% possession with Barcelona. Apparently that's a misnomer. I don't think that actually is the case, that we had 11% against Barcelona. But
I've got the DVD. Is it not called Birthday Boys? It was a doubler. Yeah, I'm going to have to check that, JP, because it comes up regularly throughout the game.
I think it was as little as 11%. I think Charlie Mulgrew might have said that in a recent podcast or something like that, and he's dropped that in, and it's been like, oh, it wasn't as bad as that. But anyway, back to the tifo. Great start to the occasion, and then it was over to the team after that, wasn't it?
Well, you know what, right? Maybe not on its own, but in terms of the tifo I'm talking about, but in terms of the atmosphere that's generated, I'll tell you something that I noticed. I picked up on this. Joe Hart was speaking about the energy in the stadium, and he did it twice. And I think that's what the fan base does. And obviously, we are led, and there's nothing wrong with saying this, a lot of the time by the Green Brigade with the singing, the chanting, the pyro, which we can't do in Europe. of course, and also the tifos. And we are led by the group because they're organised, and what they put in terms of the work and the finance and the creativity is unbelievable. And whenever I get an opportunity to give them a shout out, I will. And today is one of those opportunities, because I wasn't on the bulletin yesterday. I did the post match, of course, but I thought people had probably heard enough from me, because I was on 4 times on Wednesday, Tuesday. And I thought, you know what, I'll give their ears a break from my dulcet tones yesterday and come back with JP. Now, I'm going to tie this in because there's a few things running in my mind when I looked at that. Beautifully done, the creativity, that aspect of it. And I'll get on to the heroes who were obviously, emanating from the book and all this kind of stuff. And we've used the lyric, I've read of our heroes, I've wanted the same, and we've twisted it a wee bit for the tagline here, because what it's all about is looking into the past, and looking at your past heroes, of which we have many, and saying, well, it's time for us to create our new heroes, our own heroes. And I think Brendan Rodgers has spoken about that in many, many ways. And I think we're on the kind of cusp of being able to do that. But I was looking at the connection, obviously, of the lyric to the Patriot game. And I'm going to tie this into two things. I'm going to tie it in to where you were last night, I believe. So I always love the story around the Patriot game, right? So Dominic Behan, brother of Brendan, of course, he used the melody when he wrote the song, The Patriot Game. He used the melody of a song called The Merry Month of May. Right? He made no qualms about it. He used the melody. That's what he did. That's what inspired him to write the song, in terms of the musical aspect of it anyway. And many, many years later, some people who have tuned in might have heard of an artist called Bob Dylan. And he did the same. He used the melody of The Merry Month of May in his song With God on Our Side. Go and check it out on YouTube, the 3 songs. Listen to The Patriot Game, The Merry Month of May, and With God on Our Side. But he denied the use of the melody, which really annoyed Dominic Behan, who never minced his words, JP, right? I always remember him talking about the media and said that they're like eunuchs in a harem. They sit there and they watch everybody doing what they want to do, but they can't do it themselves, kind of thing. So Behan criticised Dylan, who claimed the melody as his own original composition. And apparently, Bob Dylan, in an early UK tour, was in a hotel somewhere in England, and Dominic Behan got wind of this and phoned the hotel to take him up on the matter, pull him up, right? And Dylan says, you're going to have to take this up with my lawyer. So apparently, this is something of a myth. Who knows if it happened? He said his retort was as follows: I've got 2 lawyers and they're on the end of my fists. that always stuck with me, and I absolutely loved it. But a couple of weeks ago, you and I were talking about the Bluebells coming to the Barrowlands for the first time in their lengthy career. And of course, on their debut LP, Sisters, there's a couple of nice wee touches here. On the front cover, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, Billy McNeil appears on the front cover in Lisbon.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, it's part of that montage that they've got in there. And also they cover the Patriot Game on that album as well. And the reason I've said it is because you were watching Bob Dylan recently, and nobody can complain now, right, that this is not a Celtic link here, because I think we've worked pretty hard to link this one in. How was the gig?
You've woven that very well into the conversation. I'll give you that. That's potentially a good couple of hours of work and research.
You know what I've been doing this morning, right, before this bulletin, even though I was 60 seconds late. But how was the gig? Because, I mean, he's an icon. He's an icon, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, very fortunate to be able to buy tickets for it. And it's the 3rd time I've bought tickets to see Bob Dylan in the last 2 years. Both times previously I went with my older uncle, my mum's older brother, and then was able to go last night with his younger brother because he couldn't make it. So my uncle Edmund, he got to go and see Dylan for the first time in his life. He's 60, and as he said to me last night, he was like, Bob Dylan was releasing songs before I was born.
Yeah,
and that sort of brought it home to me how big a deal it was for him, and it was great just watching his reaction to it. And my reaction to it was, he played guitar last night. He's not played guitar on the previous 2 tours, 2 dates that I've seen him play. So whilst it was quite fragile the way he was playing it, it wasn't note perfect. but it was Bob Dylan playing the guitar in front of you. It wasn't a laptop pretending to be Bob Dylan while he sat there and sang on a mic.
Mm-hmm.
It was him playing the guitar. He played the harmonica as well, which is amazing to hear live as well. He introduced songs into his set that he hadn't previously played, like All I've Watched Her started with that, and then played It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. He played Desolation Row, but he's kind of reworked these songs to suit his voice as it is now at 82, I think it is. Yeah. So he's not. It's not. If you went along last night and you were expecting the high-pitched, young troubadour that was Bob Dylan in the 60s, maybe you would be disappointed, but I was fully aware of what I was going to get, and his ovation at the end was testament to how much the people there were into it. And it was very little chat in between songs, the occasional, I could play here all night, we'll do another night tomorrow or something like that, and you're just like, wow. But yeah, really, really great, and very, very privileged to have got to see him again.
Yeah, I think if I ever had the opportunity to ask him just one question, it would be whether or not that was a true story about Bian phoning the hotel and threatening him with the lawyers on his fists. That would be my one question. But you're right. Sometimes you've got to sing to suit your own voice. So that's why I sing like Morrissey when I'm singing along to songs. We need to start off again, because it wasn't on yesterday, but talking that yesterday we celebrate as a football club the 137th anniversary of unbroken history. It's tremendous, JP, to see how not only do we do the annual mass at St Mary's in the Calton, which of course was our birthplace, but we've launched the foundation appeal down there for Christmas down there as well. And I just think that that's what we need to do. We need to embrace St Mary's as often as we possibly can, JP, and make sure that, a pilgrimage to Celtic Park, if possible, should maybe include a wee visit down there, because they're always in kind of financial need, aren't they?
Well, as you've pointed out on one of the previous appeals, they were in need of financial help, and the idea of any kind of establishment being closed or having to close or knocked down or anything like that, I mean, it's a far cry in terms of the importance. But I've been walking past the ABC on Sauchiehall Street, and seeing that being torn to the ground is absolutely heartbreaking when I go through the list of gigs that I've been there. So places need to be protected if they can, and because the big companies and corporations are just always looking for that real estate to build on and ultimately try and make money. I mean, imagine if you, like, in 50 years' time, you were to go by and St Mary's was gone and there was like a Tim Hortons there or something like that. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. It's just, sentiment just completely goes out the window unless things are protected. So 100%.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think even did I appreciate things like this when I was younger? I'm not sure, but with age, certainly I look at history and historical buildings, JP, and I just think, going back to something Joe Hart said, the energy is there. The energy of Brother Wilfred being in that wee hall that's not actually still there, and forming this football club that 137 years later means so much to us two and everybody that's listening in today, of which there's about 1,100 listening in. It means so much to us, and I think that if there was ever financial peril, there would be enough people to step up again to make sure that it was okay. But the formation of Celtic, it brings it around to looking at that and thinking it's cinematic. Now, any Hibs fans tuning in, and I know we used to get a few comments from Hibs fans coming in. We know that you had the hoops first. We know that you had the football club formed under similar auspices as Celtic. We get it all. We've never claimed otherwise. We're not like Bob Dylan here, right? We're going to give you the credit for that. But it's cinematic, and I always go back to, and there's newspaper reports out there of the time. Peter Millen wrote a script called Paradise, and apparently Daniel Day-Lewis was going to play Brother Wilfred and all that, and it was all financed. It never actually got financed, and I think they came up against some opposition by the football club, who wants, I guess, some kind of editorial on it, some control. It is a cinematic piece, and I would love to see it in film at some point, JP.
Well, I mean, there's no shortage of people out there creative creative sorts that could get on board with that sort of project. You know, that there's things that have been put to stage by Jim Orr, our very own Jim Orr. I mean, there's other things as well that obviously the bigger production, the Celtic, the musical, everything else. You wouldn't put it past somebody potentially within the BBC, or more, maybe not the person that was in charge of their social media the other night. I doubt he or she would be involved with that.
What was with the Kuhn? What was with the Kuhn goal? Was it a cross? Was it a shot? Come on, give the boy credit. It was sublime.
And then with the stat about Celtic have lost however many games out of 27 out of 28 games, and they've got a goal behind, and it's just like, all right, thanks for the vote of faith. You have a nameless person in the social media department.
That kind of thing, though, that's already done. They've already got the graphic. You know, it's almost like we're ready for you. There's the goal. Bang. We'll stick that one out. Stick that one in your pipe. You know, that kind of leads us on, I think, to the next kind of subject, because happy birthday, dear Celtic. As we say, 137 years young. Interestingly enough, JP, I always remember when we turned 100, right? And the Celtic history video, which was a BBC production, incidentally, it's somewhere behind me here on the shelves of stuff that I have behind me here.
Useless stat.
That's what they called it. Yes, useless stat. You should see my loft. So, yes, and I always remember watching that and, talking about it being 100 years and so many memories around being a fan at the time and thinking 100, wow. How many more of these? I'll certainly never see another centenary in my lifetime, but you're 37 years down the line, and we're doing a centenary night. By the way, that was not a shameless plug, but we are doing a centenary night. It's a time in my Celtic supporting life that I hold so dear. That centenary year, the double, just everything about it.
Your dot,
absolutely, yeah, ground zero.
I remember watching back the footage of the. Is it the Dundee game when the whole of Celtic Park singing "Happy Birthday, Dear Celtic"?
Yeah,
I mean, that's amazing. Like,
that's unreal.
Imagine you were. I wasn't there. Obviously, I was 8. I didn't go to my first game until 3 or 4 months after that. But to have been at that game and the hairs must have been standing up on everybody's necks to be able to sing that at Celtic Park in the 100th year of the club, knowing in a similar way that obviously you're just a fan and you're just a supporter playing a part in the song and the communal aspect of it, but basically knowing in the same respect as Tommy Burns was aware of when he won the Scottish Cup, he was like, in 100 years' time, my name will be on the team sheet.
Oh yeah,
you know, you'd think to yourself, well, I was in the crowd that day, especially the Scottish Cup as well. I mean, if you were there that day, I can only imagine what it must have been like, because as a wee guy watching it on the telly, it was otherworldly. It was James Allen for Las Vegas described it as like a Hollywood film, like as if someone had written it. And he's obsessed with that 88 team as well. That's his one as well, because of our ages, unfortunately.
Well, the big thing, you look back on it, and it is so nostalgic, but also there's a golden kind of haze on it. Like it was sunny on the Scottish Cup final day, and 3 or 4 Celtic players had peroxide kind of tints in their hair, and they just looked glorious with their green and white hoops. What a set of kits we had! I always wondered though, the Dundee game that you talk about, the 3-0 game, and I must have watched that, I don't know, hundreds, like literally hundreds of times. And there was the thing that was on the telly afterwards, which was absolutely off the scale good, and it was a look back on the season, and the music and everything was tremendous.
Did they use Fanfare for the Common Man? Do you know that song?
It was kind of mad electronic music they were using. Is that it?
I think it's. I'll need to look it up. I think it's Fanfare for the Common Man, which is an amazing piece of music.
And it was so well put together. It really was so well put together. And I always remember watching that game against Dundee. And after the game, because we'd won the league, but obviously we weren't given the trophy until the last day of the season, which was a match in which we played Dunfermline, who got relegated. And they started singing "Happy Birthday, Dear Celtic" to us. And we started singing back to them, "You'll be back, you'll be back," because they'd just been pumped out the league. But in the Dundee game, one thing, someone who's in the comments who might have been in the main stand might be able to clarify this. The Celtic players come back out, JP, after the crowd disperses from the pitch, and they've got the commemorative T-shirts, as was the thing and still is to this day. It's normally been hijacked by a sponsor now, but it was just like Premier League champions 1987-88, white T-shirt, green print, just from some cheap printer at the Barras probably. And all the guys come on with these T-shirts, which have become very, very rare. And they all stood up, but they were elevated above the actual crowd. They were in the crowd. Can you remember this? But they were kind of elevated. And I often wondered, because there was no way they had a stand like they have these days that, appears on the pitch and all this. Were they just standing on seats? Probably. They were probably just standing on seats.
Health and safety.
Stand. I know.
Safety aspects. But remember, you used to get loads of amazing T-shirts along the, if you're going along London Road, there used to be kind of joke T-shirts with, I don't know, just
Jackie
really...
Jackanoski. I always remember the Jackie T-shirts that were getting sold.
It was like a kind of cartoonized versions of Celtic players, or, something lampooning Souness or something like that, or Mo Johnston, just kind of joke. It's kind of the same as similar stuff you would get in Blackpool or something like that. It was really inventive.
I know. But always humorous, JP. There was always humour attached.
Yeah, it was kind of like the sort of T-shirt version and Not the View, or some of the cartoony things you'd see in Not the View. By the way, I need to correct myself because it wasn't. Nobody's told me this. I just remembered it in my head. It's not Fanfare for the Common Man by Emerson, Lake and Palmer. It's The Unknown Man by Vangelis, who did the soundtrack to Blade Runner. What do you call it? Chariots of Fire. So that's when you said it's like an electronic instrumental piece. It's The Unknown Man by Vangelis.
Talk about culture, and that's on a Celtic double winning programme on the telly. That is tremendous. The next section I've named Silence of the BAMs, right? And this is around the fact that Brendan Rodgers, even before the Dortmund game, had been written off by so many pundits, JP. North and south of the border, I've got to say. It was almost like he's this joke figure. We've spoken about this before with Rodgers. Everybody that pops up, every ex-player that pops up on one of these myriad of TV chat shows that you get now on YouTube, where a footballer will tell you all the funnies about daft things that happen behind the scenes. And the amount of stories that come out about Brendan Rodgers, but not in glowing terms. Like he's this guy that shows you his Gucci belt and he speaks Spanish and all this nonsense, right?
Flips in his Tom Fords.
That was funny. He gets lambasted by the media in relation to his European record. So young James McKenzie asked him the question in his return, what does European progress look like? And I think in the last couple of games, he's shown, for me, two ways we can approach these matches. One against Atalanta, one against Leipzig. And he should have silenced quite a few of his critics, JP, because I think he's shown... we were talking about pragmatism when he came back. What did he learn during his time at Leicester in Europe? We know that he got to the semi-final of a Conference League and he progressed into the Europa League group stages, etc. What did he learn? Is he more pragmatic than he was before? And that was almost all torn up and thrown away after the Dortmund game. He was getting it tight. 8 games in the history of Celtic, 8 games where we had been beaten 5-0 or more, or by 5 goals or more in Europe, and he had been the manager in 4 of them, 50%, and all this stuff was happening. He's answered his critics, hasn't he, in the last couple of games?
Hugely so, and genuinely, really, really happy for the guy. Just somebody that you obviously don't know personally, but you spend that much time listening to the guy. You watch all the press conferences. You're aware of when he's maybe feeling a little bit. A bit stung, shall we say, by the criticism. You can tell when that's the case, when, especially after Atalanta, where he sat down and went, it feels like people have saved up vitriol to spit at us when something goes wrong, and it's almost like kind of field day for them when something like the Dortmund game happens, because it's just like, look at that, spent all the money, think they're Champions League club, and that's what happens to them. They have their derrieres handed to them on a plate, and yeah, we did. We got it, and we had to take our medicine on that. It was how we reacted to that, and we reacted to that by going to the home of the Europa League champions, stopping them scoring against us, fair enough, we didn't score against them, but we defended well, we played well as a team. There was a shape, there was an idea. And then the other night was just, I mean, when that Baumgartner guy celebrated right in front of me, and he was giving it all that to the camera and like punching the Leipzig badge, and I'm like, you're punching a badge of a team, a club that without a soft drink sponsor would be in the 3rd division of German football. Like, it's a fake football club. I said to the guy next to me, I'd never met him before in my life because I was so riled. I wasn't drunk, but I was like, I can't stand fake football clubs, man. I was like, if Celtic ever became Red Bull Celtic, there's my season ticket, have it, because I don't want to be part of this false. And then people will be like, oh, you'd love it if money was pumped into your club. No, I'm sorry, I wouldn't. If we started hosing money in our club, that then would lead all the critics to be like, oh, well, they're only successful because they've got Red Bull and they've got all this money. Like, that's what people think about us all the time anyway, that we haven't built this.
Even it's been earned, over 20 odd years.
But if you stick Red Bull in front of our name and suddenly we're that, then, I mean, God help us, I couldn't bear it. It just wouldn't be enjoyable for me anymore. That made the other night so satisfying was the fact that we'd done it on our own terms. It was a team made up of players that were signed in a previous manager's tenure and the current, he blended the two identities, because there's obviously still elements of Ange there that you can't deny it. Some of the players that are there we wouldn't have without Ange Postecoglou. Kyogo for one, Maeda for another. Alistair Johnston as well was a Postecoglou signing. So key Carter Vickers, people in that team are of that time, and Ange Postecoglou.
Did you see the tweet on Carter Vickers?
No.
Cameron Carter Vickers has got a tiger rug at home. It's not dead, it's just scared to move.
Right, no, I thought he was great the other night, and I was concerned for Trusty after he went down with that.
I looked a nasty when he landed on his ankle, didn't he?
We were thinking he was going to come off at half time or whatever, but he played through it if he did feel any pain. But no, that's why another night the result was just so satisfying, because you're like, we've done this on our terms, and it's what a result. You can't, as Sean said, a generational result, beating a team second top of the Bundesliga, conceded 5 goals all season in the league, and then we score 3 against them, and could arguably have scored more. But when the Baumgartner was celebrating in front of me, I was like, I really, really hope you are spewing at the end of this game. And he was the first person I thought of when the final whistle went. I was like, I wonder what he feels like now, because it was all this, they obviously think they're a ticket and they're a big club and everything else. And I mean, that guy up front, I can't remember his name, but the big guy that had been linked with Man United, the striker, I'm not going to try and pronounce his name, and I can't even remember it, but I think it begins with a C or an S. But he looked deadly, and I was kind of worried about what he might do. But we took care of him, just like we took care of everything else all around the pitch, and played with like a composure that I've rarely seen from a Celtic team in Europe. I mean, if you look at that sort of way that we pressed to get the second goal, I mean, it was just. I actually thought, the way that we were swarming around them at that, right in front of the Green Brigade, I was like, we've got to score from this. I think we're going to score from this. I couldn't tell you how it was going to happen, but I just saw the intent from the players as they were completely and utterly bulldozing the right back, and then a combination of what Greg Taylor, Maeda, Hatate, and then it gets in the box and Kuhn's just got a tap in, and it was to go in 2-1 at half time was just like dream stuff, really.
Hatate, where he passes it, he's looking the other way. I love that, man.
By the way, we whatever have been critical of Hatate, I've said he's a frustrating player who is capable of more, and Brendan Rodgers is getting that out of him. I think Brendan Rodgers has sat him down, and whether he's been able to get his point across via a translator or via just the English that they can speak to each other, he's got into his head, this is what you need to do. If you want to get to another level, you need to be running yourself into the ground. And just like the Feyenoord game last year, I was speaking to somebody who knows people inside the club, and that was the most that Rio Hatate had ever ran in a game in that final.
Right.
And he was down on his back, knackered at the end of it. And what happened at the end of the game on Tuesday? On his back, knackered. Because I would imagine that if you were to look at the stats versus both games, then he's obviously put in the level of performance that's required to win a Champions League match. And then he gets his goal as a reward, what a goal.
I've never seen him celebrating like that. You know what I mean?
I
know that Kuhn has got that kind of ice cold kind of vibe going on at times, but Rio sometimes doesn't express himself, which is fine. That's just the way Rio Hatate is. But he lost it after scoring that goal. He went daft, ran behind the goals, the whole works. Brilliant to see.
And see if at the end of this season Rio Hatate was to get a move to a Southampton or a Burnley, I don't know, a Brentford or something like that down in England, I'd be like, do you know what? Fair play to you. If you go for 15, 20 million or whatever down the road, you've given us an effort that, we appreciate. And I think that is ultimately probably what he wants to do, as maybe quite a few of them do. And that's fine, as long as they play their hearts out for us when they're here. And he definitely did that on Tuesday and was by far and away the man of the match. You knew Kuhn was going to get it. I mean, there's no way he's not going to get it when he scored two, including an absolute wonder hit, which we're starting to become accustomed to from him. I mean, did it on Saturday at Hampden, an absolute world day at Hampden, and then follows that up with a Champions League performance like that. So, I mean, and again, how sweet would it have been for him to score against his old club? Because
absolutely.
Because the parallel universe is they beat us 3-1, and then the guys are going over at him like, Neil, look, wee man, like ruffling his hair and all that, like really condescending. That's the flip side of what would have happened if we'd have got beat.
You're right, and it's all about kind of the motivation. So if Nicholas Kuhn's got that wee motivation going on right now in relation to going back to the game at Dortmund and talking about, I want my form to continue, I want to be in the view of the German national team, and then we get humped, and then fuel your fire with that. And it looks as though it has fueled his fire. He was outstanding. We'll be talking about him a wee bit more. Brendan Rodgers has been criticised, but Brendan keeps his receipts, JP, doesn't he? Like, to use one of your terms, he keeps his receipts, and every now and again he just drops it. He drops the mic.
I've borrowed that from elsewhere, but yes, he certainly does, and quite right too, because he said in the presser when he arrived back, our bread and butter, we have to continue the dominance. That's what's expected here at Celtic, but it's been well documented the lack of progress in Europe, and I'd like to think that in my time here we can do something and show some sort of progression. This is progression in Europe. Last year, we won our first Champions League game at home for 10 years. And yeah, people would be like, oh, it was a dead rubber, it doesn't matter. It was a huge monkey off our back, and it allowed us to build momentum coming into this season, so that when we played Slovan Bratislava, it's like, right, well, we're protecting a run that we can go on now, because we know that the last time we played here in this competition, we won. So we want to do it tonight. And then that knocks in domino like into Tuesday, where we're like, right, we've got 2 wins at home here. Can we make it 3? And that's what he's bound to have said that to them in the dressing room. You don't want to get beat here in the Champions League. You want to lift this crowd to get you over the line, and you'll see what it can do. If you play well in this tournament, in this ground, you'll see what it does. Like, it's like flicking a switch that's not been switched on for a while. It's just been lying, waiting for someone to walk over and go, and then suddenly everything falls into place. And it was great. It was absolutely amazing. And I genuinely feel pleased for him, because he took a risk coming back. He took a risk on his reputation to come back. It might not have worked out that well. And when people have a go at Daizen Maeda and stuff like that, I'm like, you do realise that he helped us win one of the most important league titles in our history. And considering what it could have done for another club had they got that league title last season. Oh, yes.
Yeah. And the thing with Maeda is it's all short-termism. The guy's not here for 5 minutes. Let's judge him after 2.5, 3 seasons. It's not about, all right, he's not scored since whenever. I mean, Daizen Maeda's not the first choice striker. The fact that we were able to back the manager, and we'll get onto this as well, because I think there's a sense of Rodgers saying, right, see, when I'm given £11 million to sign Engels, 8.5 to sign Maeda, and 6 million to sign Trusty, this is what I'll give you back. If you give me the ingredients, this is the result. And Maeda was on the bench. We get it, but he's going to be a pivotal part of this season and any success that we get. He'll have his moment this season, JP.
100%. And I really hope when he has that moment that the people that have been giving him it tight because of his transfer fee is not his fault. That's between, if you want to have a go at anyone over the transfer fee, then shake your fist at Celtic from outside Celtic Park or Norwich for having the gall to demand top dollar for a striker that they put value on and could see what he'd done for us. And we're like, well, this is what we want for him. He's an international striker, suck it up. So I can't wait. I hope he does have a big moment, whether it's in the Champions League or in the league or the Scottish Cup again.
It's inevitable. Yeah,
you've got a guy there that can do damage, and you've seen him do damage. Therefore, I know he'll do damage again. It's as simple as that.
Yeah,
it's not as if you're looking at a guy that you're like, oh, we've not seen him do anything. They have.
I know.
Fair enough, he was on loan when he did it, but still did it in a Celtic jersey.
I hope Maeda keeps his receipts as well, mate. Some great comments coming in. I want to pose a little teaser from a good friend of mine. You'll remember Stevie Mullen, who appeared on Acsom for ages. Fantastic contributor, massive Celtic supporter, lifelong fan. And he was also talking about the TIFO the other night. He said, it got him thinking who the 5 most important people are in Celtic's history. Because, you looked at the figures and you thought, oh, brilliant, fantastic. Guys like Bobby Murdoch, and Tommy Gemmell, not brilliant. But who are the 5 most important figures in the history of Celtic? Let us know in the comments. It's an interesting little teaser, right? I mean, what are mine? Who are mine? I would look at the formation of the club. I would look at Brother Wilfred. I would probably look at Jock Stein. Some people probably don't want to have Robert Kelly in there. I probably wouldn't, but he's in the conversation, he's in the discussion. Jock Stein obviously gave us the European Goliath that Celtic became. He's a figure that you're going to have to throw into the mix, obviously. Then you're looking at players, you're looking at the greatest ever Celt, wee Jinky, you're looking at Billy McNeil. What about the modern age? Where's Martin O'Neill? Is he part of it? Where's Fergus? Where's Fergus McCann?
I would do it in my lifetime, and as in people that were alive in my lifetime and that impacted my Celtic supporting life, and it would definitely be Fergus McCann, Billy McNeil, Tommy Burns, Martin O'Neill, Henrik Larsson.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to argue with that. It really is. And by the way, on the top of that, you can do it historically, you can do it in your lifetime. Let us know the 5 most important figures in the history of Celtic. And also, where does Peter Lawwell feature? Where does he feature? I mean, let's be honest. I'm talking, when did he come to the club? 2003? Where does he feature? There's going to be people absolutely fuming at the very mention of Peter Lawwell. He needs to be in the discussion. Discuss. People will be throwing things at their telly and stuff like that right now.
That was the sound of a pin coming out of a grenade and being thrown into the comment section.
I know. I just heard some glass crashing in the background as someone dropped their cup. Right, here we go. AR, you're in 1988, the Garden Festival. I remember having some great pictures, like proper, like where you used to have to go and take them into our boots and get them processed of that. And I posted them somewhere, and they've been used so many times.
I've got my own physical picture of the Centenary flower badge that they had on that kind of side of a bit of like hill.
A mound.
Yeah, yes. I couldn't honestly tell you where that was. I'd love to know where it was. I just have a picture, and I'm not even in it. I just took a picture of it, and I've got it. It's not a great picture. It's quite
green, white, and yellow, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you can make it out. And I obviously saw it and went, oh, I'm going to take a picture of that. So, yeah.
I'm looking for ideas for the back garden, so you're inspiring me here.
Where was it? Like, please, someone, and because I bet you couldn't find that in Google, or maybe you could, but I'd be interested to know if someone actually could tell me where that was in Glasgow. Because
where is that flower mound? Yeah. We should go back, JP, recreate the photo. Estepona boy, we're talking 1988 here. It's taking us back. It was absolutely a brilliant time. Got up to everything You shouldn't. We'll leave it at that. We shall leave it at that. What happened in 88 stays in 88. Studs Lanigan, Pat, there was no Dundee end. Still fans pouring in at 3:30 p.m. that day. You ask the players, JP, and every one of them gives you a different figure as to how many folk were in the stadium.
90,000 or something like that.
And that was the old days where, obviously, what was the official attendance? 60,000 or something. And people are saying, no, try 80, try 90.
People were sitting in the trackside and all that, weren't they?
Yeah, there's a few people coming in who were at the game, which I love. I love people who are saying, no, this is my recollection. My ball, don't mess with Brendan. He is loving this period. He absolutely does. And Kevin Graham comes in to say, they stood on the wall, ? I hope they didn't. I mean, Peter Grant had a broken leg at this point, and he was there. He was standing up after the game as well.
See, just on the Brendan thing, he's loving this period. Would you put it past him to sign a new deal?
I think it comes.
I know he said I'll be here for the 3 years unless I get emptied.
Yep.
But the way things are going, it's not. I mean, I can't possibly see us just having this like wee run of great result or good results in Europe, and then it just falling away. Like this is a momentum build towards next season and the season after, and therefore we're in season 2 of Brendan Rodgers' supposed 3 years. So that means that next season, if he's to go at the end, that means that next season's his last season, and then he's away.
Yeah.
And then we're back to the drawing board as to who we get. Now, I wouldn't say we would struggle to get a manager, but are we going to get a manager that's anywhere near as good as him? I would say no.
2 days ago, I said he's the best manager we could possibly have at this moment in time. And I totally, stand by that. I think even the fact that you brought that up, we're kind of like halfway through. We're 50% through the contract here. Talking of contracts, I'm going to digress a little bit, JP. We've got some great memories coming in about the types of T-shirts that you used to see outside Celtic Park and down the bars as well. Brilliant. Get the photos up on the socials, man. See, you've got to get these photos up. So it was so, you know what happened? Designers got too good. The manufacturing of merch got too good. Everything's too good. It was the fact that they were a wee bit rubbish. They were like Viz or not. It was brilliant, right? It was great caricatures and cartoons. But I'm talking about strikers, and many times in the past on Acsom, we have spoken about. I'm going to throw the question out. When was the last time we produced a goal scorer, a prolific goal scorer, a striker? Because when I do this, right, and I'm going to put this out there first, when I usually ask the question, someone in the comments will say Sean Maloney. Sean Maloney, for me, was either an attacking midfielder or a winger, but he did score goals, JP. So I get the fact that he's in the discussion. And he actually broke through. Sean Maloney, over 2 periods at Celtic, he played 215 times and he scored 52 goals. Is that prolific? I think it's prolific for a winger. I think it's prolific for an attacking midfielder, but he's not an out-and-out striker. When was the last time we produced a goal-scoring striker, a proper, prolific marksman? Some would argue that it was Charlie Nicholas, which is astonishing when you're going back to the early 80s, right? His record was 84 goals in 117 games. And in amongst that, a broken leg as well. Jerry Craney, listen, the 90s were tough, but Jerry Craney scored goals. He scored 53 in 144, some of which were substitute appearances. And then again, people throw in the guy that came from your neck of the woods, Mark Burchill, who, bizarrely enough, if the stats are correct that I was looking at this morning, he scored 24 goals in 25 starts, but he did have 38 substitute appearances thrown in for good measure. I think he came on in Europe and scored a hat-trick as a sub.
Ish.
Yeah. So the question is, I mean, we all know we're not doing it enough, JP. Who was the last prolific goal scorer we have produced? Is it Jerry Craney?
I mean, I can't really think of anybody in apart from Burchill. Remember there was that guy Mark Anthony that was always being touted.
That's right.
He just came up against, he came up against Pierre and Tom and Cadetti. They were all ahead of him, and he was never going to get a game ahead of any of them.
Just a wee guy, wasn't he? Ginger-haired guy. Went to Tranmere.
I don't know, what the hell is it where, obviously, see if you play up front, you're normally quite, let's not beat around the bush. You're normally quite full of yourself. Like a striker is normally quite
You're
callous.
getting all the success, aren't you? You're getting the goals. I mean, Joe Hart spoke about that as well, didn't he? I don't know if you saw it.
I didn't. No.
It was the celebration, and he was talking about how Nicholas Kuhn was so like high school with his celebration. He says, in all my football career, I just wanted to be a striker. I just wanted to score a goal. I wanted to know what that felt like. And the commentator was saying to him, but didn't you get something out of a big saving a penalty? He goes, no, because as soon as you do it, you're focusing on what's coming at you next. You don't have that chance to run away and get the adulation of the support.
Yeah. No, but I was playing football a couple of Mondays ago with my pal James Martin and another friend, Danny Costello. And I mean, Danny's younger than me. I mean, I felt every one of my 44, nearly 45 years in that game, because it was there was a couple of guys playing against us that were just too good. And Danny was one of them. And his fitness was unbelievable. He's got a good touch. He was pinging shots in off posts and all the rest of it. And I said to him in the car afterwards when they were giving me a lift back, I was like, did you ever play to a level or anything? And he was like, I kind of up to like in sort of like teenage years, and then I just sort of, he was like, you know what it's like, you just end up doing other things. And I was like, the amount of people that probably, and I've said this before, that the amount of people that probably could have made it as a professional football player in Scotland, but get distracted by going out, having
other things. That bracket, yeah.
And if that happens at an early age, like 16, 17, 18, you can forget about. You need to have that rarity of a person like Callum McGregor who comes along and just dedicates his life or Chris Patterson in rugby, didn't drink, didn't smoke, just played rugby. And I happened to meet him at a very young age through a friend. And my friend said, he's a future captain of Scotland. And I was like, how do you know that? And he went, I'm just telling you, he's completely obsessed with rugby. Doesn't go out, doesn't drink, none of that. He's like, he'll be the future captain of Scotland. And then within 6 months, we were watching a game together, and he wasn't the captain, but he was playing in the first team, and he was only like 21 or whatever. And then he becomes one of the most successful Scottish rugby players of all time in the Hall of Fame and all the rest of it. And then you look at Callum McGregor, like, we need a freak accident to happen where a striker signs for Celtic at a young age and is playing like you see Callum McGregor in those shirts that are too big for him when he's playing in against wee guys. But we need somebody like that to come along that just dedicates themselves to the cause and to Celtic, and that takes them into the first team eventually. And then you point back and go, oh well, this is why. It's because he didn't go out and go out to clubs and pubs and all the rest of it. And maybe the way that society is changing and like clubbing really isn't that big a thing anymore. So maybe in the next 10, 15 years, we will see someone come along like that who does break in because of the way that society has changed. And you've got such a great poster boy in Callum McGregor to look at and be like, well, that's what can happen. If you're good at football and you dedicate yourself to it. I mean, I'm not saying Callum McGregor doesn't ever drink or anything like that. I'm sure he's had a drink, but you can tell that he's been completely tunnel vision in terms of his commitment to Celtic for a start and commitment to football. And
no, you're right. I think Maloney was like that.
Yeah,
I really do. I think he was like a role model for kids coming through, with the train. John Collins, another one who will be joining not that long down the line in a few weeks' time. Ticket link underneath. I think there's 30 tickets left. But these guys, I'm not going to say they were lambasted, but they were very much in the minority within a dressing room. The guys that dedicated themselves to the fitness and the diet and not the nights out and everything else, all these distractions, JP, which, let's be honest, it's very, very difficult. Is it cultural in Scotland? Probably, but it also is elsewhere. There's been players lost to the game all over the place. And I look at the striker position and I think to myself, why can't we produce our own striker? But I'm looking at a young kid at the moment who's in at Celtic. You'll have heard of him, Daniel Cummings, right? 18 years of age at the moment, 18. And you're looking at when Charlie broke on the scene in Birchall and Craney. That's the 18 kind of age group that they were in. At this moment in time, we're just looking at a tweet that came out. 18 goals in 17 games he has scored this season, right? Now, you're 18, you played 17 games, scored 18 goals. What else can you do, right? And at the moment, he's the second top goal scorer in the UEFA Youth League. So he's not just doing it Celtic level, Scottish level. He's doing it when we're taking that step up as well. Dug into it a wee bit, JP. Turns up, his contract is going to expire in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it looks as though we're repeating the same kind of cycle here as we did with young Rocco Vata, Daniel Kelly, who left. And by the way, I know that people have said, they've done nothing since I've left and all the rest of it. We need to ensure that a guy like Daniel Cummins gets a new deal. We need to start, and apparently, having done a wee bit more digging, negotiations have not begun with Daniel. So on the 1st of January, right, when you're scoring goals in UEFA competitions, it's the same with the senior team. You are going to start hitting radars elsewhere. And come the 1st of January, he will be free to speak to other clubs. No wonder we can't produce a goal-scoring striker when we have one at the club and he doesn't get into squads, he doesn't get game time.
When the other day in the Leipzig game, it was in the afternoon.
I think he scored.
Did he? Right.
Yeah. I mean, he is a goal-scoring striker. He's 18. Get us excited. Put him on the bench. Show us what he's got and certainly give him a new deal, JP. So it can't always just be about, we just can't find a striker. We've got one.
He should be given a new deal, even if it's a 1 year with an option of a second or something to keep him at the club beyond the point where we can actually put him into the team, or so we can put him into the team. Because if he's got that sort of goal scoring record, why would you let that sort of talent leave the building? And I know that everyone can point to various instances of people leaving and then not going on to do anything, but there's also the argument that they might have done something more had they stayed at Celtic, and we haven't given that the opportunity. But there's no way. Brendan Rodgers has been here now, a year and a half. There's no way that he doesn't want that to happen and that he doesn't want a pathway to exist for players. And whilst he may have lost some Daniel Kelly, there will be others maybe in his initial point. You'd like to think that in the second half of these 3 years that there will be introduction of youth players because of the way he's developed them and kept an eye on them and spoke to them while he's here. Because there's no way you're telling me Brendan Rodgers hasn't had conversations with players outside of the first team squad at Celtic to discuss their futures. I know that he's obviously massively focused on the here and now and what is a busy period, but he will be watching what's going on elsewhere at the club and be looking to develop players and have them come in, because he knows that that's ultimately the lifeblood of the club, and you want to be able to look to your own pool to be able to bring them in and not have to spend $4 million on a player when you've got one that can play and then potentially earn you 10, 15 if they want to go on afterwards and leave.
It'd be incredible to see. I think you're right. The way that Brendan Rodgers, by all accounts, approaches his work is meticulous. It's like there's no stone left unturned. So if something's at the club, something's happening at the club, he knows about it. I agree with you. I don't think we can look at Brendan when it comes to Daniel Kelly or Rocco Vata. I think that's a legacy thing. We're so far down the line. Maybe they hadn't had enough development by that stage. There's a sweet spot where you need to make that step up. I think 18 probably is that moment. And I would hope, like Francis Turley before him, who signed a new deal at the beginning of the season, and we've seen him appearing on the bench. You would hope that Daniel Cummins is going to, follow in the footsteps of his teammate, young Francis. It's just something I wanted to put out there because it's great going out there and signing talent from all over the world, JP. But you've got to strike that balance. You've got to also have the young guys coming through.
Well, not least for the quota, isn't it? The homegrown quota. I mean, we can't ignore that as a reality. That's something that we need to adhere to.
Without a doubt. I'd love to see him making an appearance. Loads more to talk about as the last 5 minutes draws in. Apologies again for the 60-second delay. Pat O. The Celtic players in the white T-shirts appeared in what is now referred to as the VIP seats. Is that the padded ones that have got wee heaters and that on them?
Yeah.
And back then, the directors' seats, Colm O'Connor. I had a T-shirt with Jackie, and I remember this. something similar. And Pope John Paul II under the tag, the
That's
Polish
exactly-
connection.
It's exactly the type of thing I'm talking about. I would love a recreation. If I find that image online, I'm getting it made.
I want pictures, man. These exist because Celtic fans, if you're like me and clearly like yourself, you don't get rid of any of this stuff. You keep all that kind of gear, right? Let's see all your hooky t-shirts from the 80s and the 90s. I would love to see them. Svengali Sounds confirms what you said earlier. It was 27% possession rather for the Barca win, 11%. I know, but 11 has now gone into the folklore of Celtic, right? And people are talking about it on these shows. It's a wee bit like the circular that went around in the newspaper when Celtic were formed for the children's dinner tables. And someone at some point has tacked on and the unemployed. That was never said at the time. It wasn't part of the circular. But it almost becomes fact because so many people see it and it's tweeted all the time. And I was up at Celtic one time and it was on the wall and I thought, that's wrong. But how can you tell Celtic that quote didn't actually happen? It wasn't part of the circular. The Glory in the Dream, the only reason I'm 100% sure of that is the Glory in the Dream has got that bit in the middle. The single that we released a few years ago with Paul Sheridan from the Wakes, Callie Connor. It's got that bit in the middle. There you go. What a cracking t-shirt that is. I only know Paul, obviously, through yourself and Lawrence, who know Paul Sheridan well. And I double-checked it before we put the lyrics in. And I double-checked it with the guy who wrote some of the best Celtic books on these shelves, Brendan Sweeney, who dug out the circular. And I asked, I think, Paul McQuaid from the Shamrock, the unemployed bit was never part of that particular circular. Right, Kevin, you're in also. T-shirt with Jesus saved, but Kenny nets the rebounds.
There you go. By the way, there's a market for this.
Oh, I want badges. I want T-shirts. I want it all, Kevin. And that shows also that it goes back to the 1970s, never mind the 80s and the 90s. Martin Davies says, Paul, I was there. You are right. They were standing on a long box. Oh, no expense spared for the double winners. Ian Corbett, I have one with Bart Simpson on it, doing graffiti on the wall. It says, Venglos is the boss, one in a row. Oh, absolute cheese. I love this cheese fest. It's brilliant.
Because they did used to use, the Simpsons got used quite a lot for stuff like that.
Yeah. Like Bart hosing on a Rangers badge. All this kind of stuff.
Matt Groening never saw a penny of it, right enough. But
I know. Absolutely. Pat, you're back in. That's 2 in a row. I got into the Dundee match over an hour before kick-off and the ground was full at 2 p.m. The whole Dundee end and the running track were used for the spillover from the jungle. I remember that. Kids just sitting on the track watching the game. Tony is delighted to say that he was one of the 2,347,000 fans in attendance at the Dundee game. 3-0, fabulous. Right, Walker scored a brace. Can you remember who scored the other goal, JP? The opening goal.
I mean, I would. My first thought is to go to McAvenny, but I don't think it was. I think it was it Joe Miller?
McAvenny was involved in the lead up to the goal. It was Chris Morris.
Oh, right.
Chris Morris opened the scoring. What a signing he was as well. Danny Boy, TAL, was at the Dundee game in the jungle. I was 5. My dad tried to take me on the park at the end, but the steward was a job's worth and wouldn't let me on. My own pitch invasion story, and I've said it before, 1995 Scottish Cup final, and you're just waiting for the Celtic team. It was against Airdrie. It was a rotten game. We win 1-0. It was a 9th minute header by Van Hooijdonk. And the team's doing a lap of honour, but it takes ages for them to get to me, right, at Hampden. And I'm just waiting there. And they're singing the Fields Athen, right? Everybody's running on the park, JP. I'm at the game. What age was I? 15. I'm not doing that. And this guy behind me, big glasses, big Jack Duckworth glasses on, and the green Opal Republic Island strip. He's like, right, son, you're next. On you go. I'm like, I'm not running on the park. Bottled it. He shoves me out the road. He jumps on and runs away, right? Later that night, because I always got my ma to tape the games, I'm watching the match, right? And I'm watching the lap of honour. And we're all singing the Fields Athen Rye. And I remember Charlie Nick was wearing a suit and he's singing the Fields and all this. And then I see this guy wearing a green Opal Republic Island strip getting huckled by the police. And I'm thinking to myself, that could have been me. A night in the police cells in Glasgow.
I'll never understand it. Like that wee boy running on the other night, you're just like, what are you doing, man? Like, how's that being allowed to happen by the parent? I mean, I read a thing saying that the dad encouraged him to do it, and you're like, what? it's just like nonsense. Like, one is like the players are all really locked in concentration wise to that game.
Yeah.
And it's not a home game against, you know, a minnow in the Scottish Cup or something like that. It's like a really intense Champions League game in Europe where all eyes are on the ground, and you're like, you know, wee guys running onto the park just for what? To run up to Kasper Schmeichel? Like, geez,
It's madness.
I was that was disappointing, and I will probably get hit by a fine for it or some. I mean, I know it won't be anything that's going to absolutely damage us, but I mean, it's something that could completely have been avoided. But
I always wonder who was the kid that ran on the park in the Peter Grant testimonial against Bayern Munich, and he ran past all the Celtic players and went straight to Klinsmann. Who was that boy?
By the way, in a game like that, whatever, I wouldn't really be as bothered about it in a testimonial or something like that. That there's a hell of a difference, but like in a absolute top tier competitive game, when we've got the ball and you just don't know where someone's head's going to go after that. I'd like to think that a player could cope with a pitch invader or whatever else, but it's just a distraction that was not necessary at that time.
100% concentration at that moment. You're spot on. You're spot on. And I know that across Europe and elsewhere, there's people doing it for clicks. It's all about content and all that. So this is a kid with his old man who's basically encouraging him to do it. So, yes, I'm pretty sure it will be called out at some point by the gaffer who likes to call things out like that. We have spoken about Tom Ford shoes, Bob Dylan songs, Brendan Behan's lawyers. Anything else you want to throw in? We will discuss it. 1,600 strong on the live stream. Always a pleasure speaking to JP Mason. Now, thank you, every single one of you, for getting involved every single day. It's absolutely astonishing when you look at the figures. Thanks, everybody, for subscribing.
Having the live stream the other night, was it 7,000 or something like that?
It peaked at like 8.5.
That's
8.5. I know. And you know, nobody with a Union Jack emoji was in the comment section, JP. I was dead surprised at that. So it was brilliant. I really appreciate all your support. If you want to come along and have a centenary night with us, we've got Pat Bonner, Roy Aitken and Peter Grant on the bill. 3 guys who played over 1,500 games combined for Celtic. Astonishing. Absolute stalwarts. Great stories. A great night of Celtic chat and music and film as well. Ticket link underneath the video. We'll see you again tomorrow at 12:30 on a Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers, Paul.